So I'm at Slavoid T.
All right, this is Shit Spouter 37.
This is Black.com pilled.
This is the Fed Post.
But how do you personally identify? You were saying like do you not really care about like labels, or we don't really care much about labels?
Yeah, so I'd say my ideology varies depending on who I'm like arguing with a lot of the time.
Yes.
But generally, it's just conservatism. I'm very socially conservative, and it's more just about restoring. I believe in just restoring America and the American dream, which has been really hollowed out for most of the people in this country. So whatever it takes to get that, I don't care if it's like if you want to call it any sort of leftism or like GOP republicanism. It's just like, get that. Trump had on some of his stuff, he had a pretty left-wing message by, at least by traditional standards. So whatever it takes to get that done is my ideology, but it's, it takes a lot of work. You really need to tear down every institution, rebuild it from the ground up. That's the short version of it.
By any means pilled.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. His whole like, anti-free trade thing. I mean, that is like conventional leftist shit. Like
him and Bernie were in there, they were probably giving each other high fives on some of the tariff stuff and that free trade stuff. And that's good. You love to see that. I love to see when Bernie and Hawley are out there together going against like, the right of the Republican Party and the left of the Democratic Party agreeing and like going out there and saying like, screw the establishment. We just want to get this done for the people. Like that's awesome. So
that's true. Yeah. And Slav has mentioned like, who you're frustrated with is who recently burned you. Right. So like, obviously like I'm bitter about Bernie, obviously.
Yeah, no doubt.
The credit I will give is like, he will show up with like a Ron Paul. He doesn't really like, he'll show up on Rogan. Like he doesn't really care about the whole imaginary boundaries.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He's just like, well, if this like benefits my agenda, then like, I don't care who I have to align with. Like, that's just what will get it done. And that's, I can get some of the frustration with Bernie on the left. I get it on the right because I look back at some of Bernie Sanders' speeches in the past and they were not very, they're not very similar to what he's saying now. He kind of got co-opted by he kind of got a little bit co-opted by the neoliberal left on some of the social stuff. But, deep down, I think he knows that he didn't really have a choice. Because that's that's the direction the party's going, but still, so like I said, Republicans like to rail against lockdowns, and they're like, oh well, we're never doing lockdowns again. Like, nope, not happening. Well, they already happened, and this one of the biggest transfers of wealth in modern history that already occurred. So if you want to actually fix that, you're going to have to do something. At least on a Republican side, you're going to have to do something that goes against the orthodoxy, and you're going to have to think about maybe some sort of increase in taxes or some sort of redistribution to get this back figured out. But, there are a lot of Republicans are very uncomfortable doing that. So just because, they see it as something that is more of a left wing policy traditionally, but that's not what we should be arguing about right now.
Right. That's when it's like labels start to get in the way, is in instances like that.
Yeah, I saw you posting about that too, about how like you're like, oh, well, as soon as you do that, you kind of get boxed in,
Yeah, that's a thing that we've just been dealing with like from the jump. Really, is like, I guess we all three started as like Bernie people, but I don't think I guess I was more traditional like left or whatever, but we all got there for different reasons, and like, that was just sort of a vehicle. Same thing with Trump. I mean, I was on board with Trump, but as like a vehicle, you know what I mean? It's not really like an ideological thing.
Yeah. It's just like you see Trump as sort of like, I still think the best thing Trump can do is weakening the establishment,
Yes. Yeah.
especially on the right, because he has a lot more gravitas on our side. I mean, he is the leader of the party right now, but
That's true.
you know, but I still think that's a great thing, best thing he can do it. So, you know, there are people who in Washington, you might not see it as much, but in DC, you know, you see people who are like, well, you know, Trump was just this enigma. They still really don't understand how he got elected. And it's sad, but that's just the way they were so ready to get back to where they were at. It's just not gonna happen. So
I was talking about this the other day. It's like I feel like it took like this exertion of will and resources to just ensure that absolutely no lesson was learned from the past 4 years at all. And you can see like fucking narratives just like dropped like fucking flies, but they just kind of peppered us with them, and you get just this. You kind of end up with like no one really believes anymore that it was like the, you know, all laid at the feet of Russian bots or this or that.
I mean, that's how corrupt this whole thing is too, because even just it's almost hard to keep track of all these different narratives that are just hoaxes or lies that are spread by the media and by the government too. But when you're like, I remember I saw CRK the other day. Like, he's like, do you remember when people were saying like the USPS is going to be gone? Like, I had forgotten about that, but that's
me too,
like,
man. I forgot too.
I had forgotten about that, but that's what they do is they hammer you with all these narratives that you can't even remember what was true and what was not, because you're just fed these lies every single day nonstop. Yeah. And all these little psyops that they do are just a way to keep people distracted, obviously. And working in the media, especially, you know, I see stuff from everywhere: MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, WAPO, all day, every day. And these people are really, I mean, they are really sick.
They are.
Yeah.
Can't be said enough.
They really are.
That's one thing I was going to ask you about, like how it is working around and with these fucking sickos, man.
Well, I actually work, you know, my work does a pretty good job. We do as much as we can to expose all of these lies. I mean, there are too many to keep track of, like I said. But we, you know, what we do is, you know, you see some people, even if you're just going to like a cocktail hour or something, like if you see people from a left network and you say like, hey, you know, I work at a conservative outlet, you know, they kind of definitely look down on you. And it's like, It's like, all right, whatever, man, I was just trying to be nice. But, you know, you get some of that on the right too. You get a lot of snobby elitism. So it just depends. I mean, it's fun. I love my job. During the week, I'm online like all day. So, you know, on the weekends, I never really check my phone just for my own sanity.
Yeah, you gotta have those times.
But I kind of just, after a week, I just tap out of the news for the most part, and then I get back on it on Monday. So
no, that's the move. You can't take all this shit to the face. You really can't.
Oh, I know. You gotta go touch grass. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. No, yeah. And the USPS thing, like, I don't know what. I think I was like checking my alt, and I saw like some old Bernie mutual, and I saw on their name they had like "Save the USPS" still today, and I was like, "Holy shit, I forgot about that."
Dude, that's
shit.
gonna go the way of fucking abolish ICE, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Yo, people were protesting in the street about it, and like, I think the TSA thing is like a recent thing that's been going on or whatever.
Wait, what's up?
I don't know
with
much
the
about
TSA?
that.
Wait, what?
People are protesting to keep the TSA around?
No, there's some culture. Do you know what it is, Logan?
No, you'd probably be able to speak better on it than I would.
Not really.
Seriously, no, I just talk out of my ass a little
So
bit.
welcome to the Fed Post.
No, I just saw like people were saying like, oh, like there's some culture war going on of like right wingers disliking TSA and left wingers being like, oh.
I saw somebody. There was some JD Vance quote, and he's like the new target because he's like the new Republican guy who is pretty like kind of anti-establishment. So like there were a bunch of people who are like, you know, they were like they work at these like anti-Trump conservative outlets, which are just like laughable, basically.
They're fucking demonic.
They were just like taking aim at him over something he said like that was derogatory toward the TSA, but it was just a stupid, dumb look and a dumb argument in the first place, because like, I mean, that might be some place where you actually have a real bipartisan agreement, and that's TSA sucks.
Absolutely, man. Anyone with a fucking brain that's ever flown before knows that shit is miserable.
Yeah,
and like,
trying to make it
the
a
left
racial
is going
thing.
to come out and like pivot to being pro TSA just to like
That's how
own
you
the
win. That's how we
neocons.
win. This is how we win. Uncut gem. No, they were trying to make it a racial thing, like, oh, these white people, they hate these minority TSA workers or whatever. Like, I saw that take. You think of the worst take you can think of. It's out there,
Yeah.
But as if black people don't hate TSA, as if everybody doesn't fucking hate TSA.
I mean, you would think that they would dislike the TSA because of all the racial profiling that goes on with like them doing random searches and stuff like that.
Brown people love the TSA.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the whole deluge shit in general, like the media bombardment, like, I mean, yeah, I think I remember like Bannon, who I like kind of begrudgingly admire, or not admire, but I like him. I think he's very like savvy.
Yeah.
I disagree with him about a lot of shit, obviously, but like, I think I remember him saying in some interview, like, that was a strategy with Trump, was just to like, throw out shit, throw out some red meat, whatever, like let them chew on it, let the media go hysterical.
No, I always remember
the
the post about like Hillary got schlonged by Obama, right? And then everybody's like, Jesus Christ.
Wait, Trump
right?
posted
Like,
that?
Yeah, Trump posted that in like the
Whoa.
2016 election,
Big.
and then he like responded and he's like, "What? What's the problem? Schlong. This is a completely common term."
I remember Warren got the DNA test, and the media was like, "Hey, you said that if she got the test that you would pay to this charity or whatever." And he's like, "So what?" It's gone. It's gone in a day. You know what I mean? That's Chad-based shit. Like, he's right. He just knows the game, and I mean, he used it. I mean,
just
I don't know.
didn't do it.
I don't know if he invented this technique. Obviously, he probably didn't. But like, it's just the savvy thing to do.
Well, he knew like his whole world before he was running for office. His whole world was he was interacting with all of these people, so he knew how to play them like a fiddle, and he really did. Especially when going back to the Schlong thing, he was one of the top 10 posters of all time, and
easily.
And for what
top five, come on.
And for what they did to that, what big tech did to that man is the crime of the century. Almost.
Abomination. Yeah. It's. I can't believe that shit. I can't.
Dude, do you guys fucking remember like on election night when he fucking posted and he's like, they want to steal this thing, but we will never let them. And then fucking like, and then I feel like it was like just a few minutes later, fucking boom, banned. And like, it was like a fucking, it was like out of a movie. Like,
it's like automatic. But they were testing that out even before the election. They were like fact checking a bunch of his timeline and stuff.
They gave him a temporary ban before it.
Didn't they ban the New York Post or something like that?
They banned the Post too. Yeah,
like the longest lasting newspaper in America.
Props to the Post though. They held out, and then once Twitter faced enough pressure, Twitter's like, okay, we'll reinstate them. But it was like 2 weeks they censored the oldest newspaper in America.
Yeah.
What was it? Do you guys
They got
remember
what they needed done.
Oh,
they
man,
did it on the. It was a story on when like Hunter Biden's laptop came out.
Oh, holy shit, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
So, and then they were calling it like Russian disinformation and like hacked material and like shit like that.
The go-to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the old playbook.
Yeah, they got a factory over in Russia. They just like build misinformation.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
Oh my god, that Russian bot! It's only been 6 months, but that Russian bot thing is just disappeared. But that was just a go-to. That was just a thing we all dealt with. It was just,
the amount of times
the farms of Russian bots that were influencing all these millions of voters in America.
Right. Like, dude, I still remember the primary, and like it's like the golden days of being online, being like a Bernie bro troll, and just having fat women liberals call you a Russian bot just as their go-to response.
Yeah.
There was a while where that
K-hive,
was the new incel.
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah, that got me off plenty times.
That makes me almost wish I was like back in Bernie in 2016, just so I could have had those NPC libs just calling me a Russian, like a Russian front or something.
Oh, it was good. It was all we had. It was good.
It was pretty solid.
Well, so pivoting from him, I know this is something that this is one of CRK's prophecies, but are climate lockdowns coming next? I feel
100%.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, without, I have no doubt about it. I had no. I think it was like 6 months ago. I stopped having doubts about it.
Yeah, I mean, but see, the question is when, like, they're going to use some big natural disaster to just be like, okay, well, you know,
we need a 9/11, a climate 9/11.
Yeah, climate 9/11. Like, okay, well, you know, if you're if you care about saving the environment, just stay inside.
It'll be like some fires or something. Like the whole state of California is going to catch on fire, and they're going to be like, "All right, everyone, stay inside and don't even think about turning on the faucet."
So that's all you got to do is you got to take something real that's actually happening, like an increase in hurricanes, superstorms, wildfires, things that are actually happening, and then just exaggerate it a little. Just exaggerate it, go threat level orange.
Well, I think one thing that's going on with it, and I think this will be invaluable, is the fact that like everyone's view of environmental issues are all just this huge abstracted out global climate thing, as opposed to like local issues. Local issues,
right.
You know, the
it's
health
abstract almost.
Yeah, no, that's the whole thing.
It's completely, and we've talked about this recently, but like people don't appreciate like the health of their local rivers and streams and shit like that, or
they don't even know the name of their local stream, bro.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No, or just like, I mean, we were talking about with the California wildfires, right? Like just the kind of mismanagement that has kind of made this problem, that has exacerbated this problem. I think what you do is, I think that we're getting another COVID lockdown, at least in some capacity, before
we're going to do some like variant or something to keep it going.
Well, I'm going to come back and say, I will admit that because I said a couple episodes ago with Alex G and Slothrop that I wasn't sure that they'd be able to do it again. I think that I was probably wrong on that. Like, I bet that they probably will. I mean, the place I'm living now just issued mandatory mask mandate again for people, regardless if they're working or not. Or not working, if they have the vax or not. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be fucking Delta Plus Game of the Year Director's Cut edition. Everybody that pre-ordered is gonna get an AOC mask. I think that you have all of these little mini crises that take everybody by surprise, because it's not how they interact with, that's not how they interface with environmental politics anymore. And then you go, look, it's everywhere. It's fucking everywhere. Everywhere is in free fall right now. Everybody's getting these little texts saying to, turn off your fridge and your little cuck shed.
Oh my God. New York, I got a text about turn off the AC, turn off the electricity, heat surge. Never gotten that before. There's been plenty of heat surges. Never got it. And some people were pointing out, like, oh, Times Square lights are still on. That's essential. But then so like they'll keep like all like they'll do it again, but then they'll allow like Amazon to go out and still conduct their regular business, and they'll get an exception.
That's the functionality of like what you're talking about, Slav, like making it so intangible and like immaterial, is when you take these things and you make them like these metaphysical almost like things that are just like the invisible hand of the environment, that's just a karma shit or something.
I think like, yeah, you're absolutely right. But like on the left, they've almost substituted religion for like the environmental like movement. It's like almost a god to them, which is like, instead of viewing it as like a creation of some high, and I'm a Christian, but if you're like just religious, instead of viewing it as like God's creation or some higher being's creation that we should be stewards of, they say like, oh no, this is in charge. Like if there's a fire, we're being punished for our sins, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's eschatology. Yeah. Like if you really, it makes me feel fucking anxious to even ponder for a moment, the average person that buys into every premise of this stuff, right? I'm not an outright climate change denier.
But it's a lot of the country too, which is
Well, dude, they're pumping it through. Like now it's in like all the education systems and stuff too. Like I'm seeing kids books that are like called, the titles like "We Are All Greta," and it's like cartoon versions of Greta and like a kid's story and shit, dude. I'm seeing crazy shit on a daily basis.
That's going to be like the next like push too, is like climate criminals. Like if you're like a criminal to the climate by some arbitrary measure,
the carbon police are going to get your ass.
Yeah, or like some bullshit like that.
Yeah, if you're doing bad crimes like having children instead of good crimes like emptying garbage bags out of the bartels with as much stolen goods as you can, it's fucking absurd, dude.
Well, it is, and you're right. That's another thing you see. Like you've seen that published in like mainstream newspapers, like or news outlets that are just like, oh well, don't have babies for the environment, or like, am I? They always. I said something online about this, but they always frame these like crazed ideas as like thoughtful questions. So it's like, should I not have a second child to save the environment? Like, it's like, dude, you're just crazy. Like, stop writing.
We made fun of that, like that photo of like a family with like 8 kids, and somebody's like, this is environmental terrorism or whatever.
Yeah, like, okay.
And this is the thing, I just saw some picture today. Somebody posted of like in Cali, like they got some like hostel type situation where people are living there and like paying $1,500 a month, and they're like in a in the pod, in the proto pod, basically. Yeah. And like, I mean, I think that whole narrative of like, well, I'm saving the environment, I don't, this is good actually, or, I'm white and my
everything sucks, but like I'm saving the environment.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of like some cope with how it's going, like, oh, well, I'm white and like I've been privileged, so it's actually good that this is happening. Like, people will find they'll have a way of rationalizing it. Basically, dude, I think that's a perfect like synergy.
I like
right
gone to check out places like in the past when I was like looking for apartments and shit. I've like gone to fucking apartments in my area. I'm like around Seattle, right? And there's just like the people that live there are like, yeah, we're like a zero waste house, and they're just telling people outright, like they just all neurotically
eat their own shit.
It's just insane. Like, I don't even know. I don't think about that shit at all. So I couldn't even tell you the kind of but like people just don't see any problem with just like living on top of each other, completely regulating. Yeah. I mean, what is it? Are you telling your roommate to save their nail clippings or something? I don't.
Well, there was that thread the other day too, where that guy was like, my family hasn't used toilet paper for years. We usually some lefty was spazzing out telling me that it's a parody account. I don't know. I mean, at this point,
that one has to be a parody account, bro.
In this point, maybe you can tell.
I didn't tell anymore because I thought it was so crazy. But maybe it
can tell anymore. What's
walking around with a shitty ass to save the environment, bro.
But at the same time, it doesn't. It's like all these things about like, oh, it's actually parody. It's like the thought is still prevalent, right? Like this is still what people think. How many articles have I seen of like, oh, millennials who retired, who actually got to retire? This is what they did. They scrounged and saved all this and
I'm sure it's
extreme
real.
shit.
There's definitely people out there. There's definitely people out there wiping their asses with reusable rags, thinking that they're doing something. But I don't know that account is like
right, exactly. The thought is still prevalent. Like this is how people are thinking now. Like because nobody's retired. We all know you're not. Retirement is rare now. Rare.
Or the BlackRock CEO coming out and saying that Americans are going to have to work longer hours and take more investment risks if they hope to retire. It's like, motherfucker, I'm going to take an investment risk in something in Minecraft that's going to...
No, I mean, I don't want to brag. I mean, I do want to brag, but like I have been saying for a long time that they're going to bring back the fucking lockdown. I've said it for
you should brag about that because you were pretty right about that.
Bro,
at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and this relates back to what we're talking about. The media deluge thing is like nothing that is the current state of the media is permanent, right? It comes and goes, right? Not everything is temporal. So it's like, yes, okay, a couple months ago, everybody's like, wow, COVID's over. We got the vaccines. It's finally over. We're back to normal. Like people are saying that. And I'm like, dude, what makes you think there's any consistency to any of this? There's never been any consistency. Yeah. So why? And also, and the number one question in my mind that is very clear. It's like, what reason do they have to not do it? They made a killing. They made the most money they've ever made. Why would they not do it again? And I mean, I can't think of a single reason why they wouldn't.
Well, you also have like the normies out and about that are living like taking these severe restrictions and precautions seriously and trying to do their part. And then the people at the top don't even really, they don't take it as seriously as they tell the regular people to take it. So like, why are you still buying as some regular person, average person in this country, why are you still like buying into this if the people telling you to do it aren't?
Cue the Gavin Newsom dinner party.
Yes, Gavin Newsom at the dinner party, Pelosi at the hair salon, and
and there are Republicans too. It's not just like the hypocrisy. Of course, both. Yeah, I mean, it was hypocritical on both sides. It was just like good for the very upper echelon, and that was it.
They're the same people as far as I'm concerned. Like, what was it? Mitch McConnell's like, it's simple, get vaccinated.
Yeah,
I mean, he could have a D next to his name. It's the same shit to me.
I mean,
it really
DeSantis was just talking about it.
Get vaccinated? He said that?
Yeah.
Yep. He was like, these vaccines are saving lives down here in Florida, bro.
Okay,
I
so
think
he's against passports.
Bitch shit right there. That's what that is.
Yeah,
he's
but
against passports.
He banned the passports, though.
He did. That's pretty base.
That's good. Yeah.
Well, I think
they got a lot of elderly in Florida, so he was like, get the elderly vaccinated down here, so we can get back to normal.
Right. I mean, if you're old and you got secondary conditions, yeah, why not? I mean, I don't blame you.
Than Cuomo did, the nursing home killer.
Really? How could we forget?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
we actually I'm just going to go on a little bit of a rant here.
Yeah.
But we were the first ones who broke that story, and we were screaming it from the rooftops for months before the media would say, oh, okay, well, maybe there is something to this nursing home scandal. When everybody knew it was going on, they already knew, but they just had to wait until it was narrative approved by the New York Times to be able to say it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you guys broke that.
Yeah, we broke it. We were the first ones to do it. That's March of 2020.
That's so interesting.
Or May. It might have been May of 2020. It was somewhere in the spring, but either way.
Because in politics, there's always like there's a barrel of dirt on everybody, and like it only comes out when it needs to come out. So like with him, it was like a very
it was a matter of time.
Oh yeah, it was a timing. Like they were done with him. And that's when everything came out. So it's just interesting that they needed
there. They needed him for like Trump and to like hail him as their Trump. And then once that was over, then they're like, oh, okay, well, Andrew Cuomo's actually sort of bad now. So
yeah, they created this little army of like off-brand Trump homunculi.
Yo, you remember Avenatti?
Oh my God, isn't he like facing criminal charges?
Yeah, he's going to prison. His sentencing was the other day.
He committed to the bit. He committed to the bit too hard.
He really did.
He's like a Heath Ledger's Joker.
Well, he was right. But see, that's how corrupt it is that like our media elevated this total scam artist from the get-go just for like, it's all of these little things. Like I saw that the other day when he was being sentenced. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about Michael Avenatti. But that was such a big thing. Like it was just like a, couple months long media thing. And then they threw him to the side again to the wolves like they always do.
Yeah, Slav's right. There's a lot of like product testing. They're just like, hey, does this work? Is this our blue Trump? Like, does this work? But I think for like, so I'm wondering like, as far as like your job or whatever, like with the Daily Caller and all that, like, so with the media, they'll usually like, how do you like, you're in it. You're in the thing. Everybody I've known who's like works in media, like they're bombarded. Like, I mean, I know some libs, so like they're frazzled to bits by all the stuff. Like every day they're frazzled by it because they believe it. So I don't know. Like, so how do you like? Do you just take everything?
COH's grandma.
Yeah, I get a little frazzled too, but not on the side where it's like I'm just sitting there like taking whatever thing the media says I should be freaked out about that week. But I get frazzled on the side where I'm like, oh my gosh, these are some of the most powerful people in America. They're all, pretty much in lockstep with each other. You have a few good ones at each of the networks, give or take. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they are all in lockstep. They all believe the same things for the most part. Now, it depends on that's another reason why they hate. They hate where we work. They hate where I work. They hate any place that dares to differ from like the MSNBC approved talking points. But, I get frazzled just on the side that, number one, they're liars. Most of them are objectively bad people. They don't really care about telling their audience the truth. They also don't care about the role of journalism, which is actually holding the powerful accountable. And instead they elevate those people and protect them almost at any cost. And they also do a lot of terrible stuff for our country. So they push these things that are meant to alienate most of the general population. There's a great article in Tablet Magazine I should show you guys, and I could send you the link after this. But the number of times that racism and the word racism and the word race.
I saw you post about this, yeah.
Yeah, and the word and like terms like disadvantaged communities or vulnerable communities. All these race narratives. The number of times that those words, narratives have been mentioned in mainstream outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post skyrocketed in like just within the past like couple decades. Like it's a very recent thing, but this is what they do. It's a divide and conquer strategy. So they get people ginned up along racial lines. They do terrible race politics, race baiting. I mean, it's almost nonstop now, and it's the same with all the trans stuff and all the LGBT stuff. Like you have to accept this, or you're like, you're just labeled as an evil person who hates this country, or like you hate equality for everyone. And it's really just a giant distraction. So, I get frazzled on the side that like people actually believe that these, this is the truth. Like they turn on CNN or like read Washington Post, like, they just take it at face value and they say, all right, I'm like reading this must be what's going on. And it's all meant to just divide the population. It's really an evil strategy. So I get upset with it on that side. But we have a lot of fun too. So we try to, we're trying to work to counterbalance that on our part.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, we try to talk about it as much as we can, but like, yeah, I mean, it's clear. It's clear. I mean, if you keep going on and talking about, all white people are evil, or all white people hate all black people. And,
well, yeah. And you have like, I'm originally from Ohio. I just moved to DC 2 years ago. But I grew up in Ohio. I lived most of my life there. And I went back there. I drove back this past weekend for my sister's wedding, and you drive through a little bit of the Midwest, you drive through some of Pennsylvania, some through West Virginia, some through Ohio, and it's the same story everywhere. It's just driving through some of these towns that have just been forgotten or left behind, or that have just, they used to be thriving once and now they're not. Yeah. This is people of all races. They've just been left behind. And so, they keep the racial politics turned up to a maximum so that they can ignore this problem. And so that, people don't actually start questioning it and saying, well, hey, I live in a multiracial working class neighborhood, and we're all getting screwed by this, not just buying into whatever CNN says. I mean, CNN really does want you to hate your neighbors.
No doubt.
And that's really the saddest part about it. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to fight back against that whenever we can. And it's good work. It's important work. Needs to be done. These people need to really be brought down to reality. And it's like a lot of them, they're mostly the same. They're mostly just college educated liberals that are pushing this stuff. It's a very elite group. It's not like, you're seeing a lot of people from the rural Midwest working in media to push these things. No, it's just like coastal graduates.
Yeah, a bunch of motherfuckers with like humanities degrees that they went and got so they could try to learn about what it's like to live like a real fucking life with real struggles.
Like a $50,000 tuition degree. You buy into it. Yeah.
Logan, what you were talking about with like you going through Ohio and seeing all those towns, man, like I've been on a couple of road trips as of recently, and like driving through like those quote unquote what people call flyover states. And stuff like that, and which is miserable. But in seeing those towns where it's like there's just a hollowed out centers of like there used to be a pretty bustling population probably, and you see the only remnants of things that are there. Like there's empty shopping centers everywhere and empty small shops, but then there's like a McDonald's on the corner that no one's fucking at, and there's a couple of chain stores around that no one's at, and it's like essentially what happened is these places got just enough of a good economy going from like small businesses and their own shit going there. Maybe they produced something real and material there. And then all of a sudden, once they had a big enough economy to maybe support a chain, those things started coming in. And
Yep.
once it's big enough town to support a McDonald's, well, then McDonald's comes in then.
Yep.
And then your small town diners and stuff start to slowly close up. And then all you're fucking left with is this goddamn McDonald's that no one can fucking eat at anymore or anything like that either. It's fucking sickening.
It's depressing as hell. And it's like, well, you know, we kind of destroyed your town, but at least you have a super Walmart there now. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if that's like the best trade, but I also don't want to blame all this on the media. So it's obviously economic, like you mentioned. It's economic. It's also driven by a lot of technology. So the technological revolution really just got people glued to their TVs. They never really went outside in their communities anymore. They didn't spend as much time talking to their neighbors. They didn't spend as much time talking to or leading or building community-led initiatives. And it's cultural too. So when we got rid of a lot of the religion, and that's kind of the last thing that still hasn't been completely destroyed in some of these communities. But for the most part, it's a multifaceted problem. But then my issue is when this stuff happens, the media will say, well, actually, it's a good thing because you have all this technology now and you're inside and things are cheap. So like you might not be able to support your family on a single income, but you can buy, you know, a TV for pretty cheap in this country. Like you can go buy a laptop for pretty cheap. Like, I don't know if that's a great trade. I think the media should spend a lot more time actually analyzing if that's a good trade. But they don't. They just say, well, no, this is really a good thing for you.
Yeah, our conception of progress is so fucked in this country. Like people are like, "Oh yeah, that's like actually good progress," and like quality of life is better. And it's like, is it really though, or are those just like these like completely just like random things that you're saying? Like, oh, this actually means you have a better life. Just symbols that actually hold no material meaning.
Yeah, it's like by what measure do they have a better life? Like, yeah, in terms of well, hey, yeah, you might have a cheaper electronic goods, but I don't know.
You got 24 colors for your iPhone case, but you're highly leveraged and in debt to pay your fucking bills.
And not to mention it's going to break within 2 years once they release that update to kill your phone off after it's been a little while, and you have to buy a goddamn new one.
Planned obsolescence. They got that on the vaccine too.
Before you even pay for the first one in the goddamn first place, dude. It's just you're just linked in forever with these payments.
They're smart. I mean, what you guys are talking about, it reminds me of this. Like I took some electives in like urban planning, and that's pretty much all they talk about is how to gentrify places. Like how do you find a place with like a tax base and all this, the consumer base, and just hollow it out and just turn it into everywhere else and kill off everything at the ends. And
like what we need is actual real like good city planning that's not about like, well, how can we just like haul this place out and let corporations run train on this small town, but like, oh well, how can we actually make this like the most like usable for the community? How can we center good public spaces and utilities and services that better serve the people that live here? No. It's just about how can we better use the people that live here to further our means.
Yeah, it's extraction. It's pure like putting a giant funnel on the top and draining out the money, and it just leaves the area, goes to some headquarters overseas or whatever. And
and it's all of it is like it's just like this materialist individualism where it's like you don't have any other responsibility except to like yourself, and you don't really have to really like do anything for your family or for the community or for the world. You just have to like be yourself and like try as best you can to climb up the ladder, and that's it.
It's that liberal individualism, bro. And it's
like no kids. All I can like the rest of my life I can just like watch the next Marvel product and collect all the stupid consumer electronics
and figure out what your 24th pronoun is and your 24th flag and all that. Like, that's pretty much all you can do.
And like you're talking about, like from my perspective on the right, it seems almost bewildering to me that you don't have, there are plans for I live in Virginia. I live right outside of DC, but Amazon is coming here very soon. They made, I believe it was when they made the switch from like AOC said she didn't want them in New York, and then they were like, okay, well maybe we'll go to Virginia. I believe that's the case, but
headquarters too. Yeah, HQ
it might not be. It might not actually be because of her. I don't know exactly why they're coming here. I mean, obviously you know why they're coming here, but I don't know what the cause was. But I don't. For me, I don't understand why Republicans aren't in these places saying, sounding the alarm, saying like, this is not a good idea. Like, these places they want you to live. They literally want you to live in a pod. They don't care about workers. They don't really care about the economy. They don't care about the American economy, at least. They care about the economy, but Amazon doesn't really care if America goes under. They have they have access to other labor markets across the world. So they're not really worried about what America is or what it's supposed to be. And so for me, I just, that's part of the issue that I have with Republicans is it's just this constant subservience to big business, no matter what the cost, and
trickle down Reaganomics.
And you're starting to see some backlash against this on the right. I don't think nearly enough, but
which is good. It's
good.
Yeah,
it is good, but I still don't think it's enough. But to me, that just it leaves me at a loss for words sometimes.
No, it's one of the more heartening things I've seen is the right sort of leaving the free market thing and like kind of shifting away from a lot of that, old neocon stuff. It's really important.
We're still somewhat, at least in DC, you've seen a lot less of this, and throughout like local and state electoral Republican politics. But in DC, a lot of them are still captive to this libertarian agenda, economic agenda. And that's what the entire think tank class is in DC. On the right, it's libertarianism, and on the left, it's neoliberalism. And they both are basically working to preserve the same thing. So, there isn't like an America First think tank in DC. I mean, there have been a couple that have sort of popped up now, but for the most part, the big ones, the entrenched ones, the institutional ones, they all do the same thing, whether it's from the left or the right.
Yeah, because libertarianism is going with the flow, and the flow is right now a neoliberal order. So like they're like on the same page. But yeah, that's one thing. I mean, it's one thing I've always just found amazing was like the neocon argument of like, oh, these companies, they're American. They want they're like they have some fealty to the soil. They have no feel. There's nothing tethering them to this country. There's nothing like this. They're everywhere. They're global. So like what America might as well be Vietnam to them. And honestly, it's going to be.
Well, a lot of them view it as that way. I mean,
exactly.
Like at least in terms of the multinational ones, they view it that way.
Absolutely.
And Republicans have to start, and Democrats alike. But I think Democrats are so much, they're at least Republicans and Democrats in DC are both bought and paid for by these people, which is one of the major problems. But at least in terms of the major corporations, they have every neoliberal talking point you could say. So as long as their profits are protected, they're willing to go along with this. They're willing to parrot all of the left's social ideas and their agenda. And I think that's what's been more radicalizing for a lot of people on the right is like, whoa, trans lives matter from Chase Bank. Like, thanks a lot, Chase. Like, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. It's funny how these things become cultural or into idful when it really has not like the whole thing we're just talking about of like hollowing out a flyover state, like that's gentrification, like which usually people think of as like, oh, that's affecting minorities or whatever. It's like, no, they do that to everybody. Like it's a class thing, like clearly. Yeah. But I think that leads to a question I'm kind of wondering, like, because you were talking about like redistributive policies, which I'm on board with, and like we among the three of us have had disagreements about this, but like to what degree do you balance out the idea of like reshoring manufacturing versus redistribution? Because I think those two things are usually, I feel like people usually fall
go hand in hand from your perspective.
Well, I feel like people usually fall on one end or the other on that. I feel like if you're more about reshoring, you're more like against redistributive policies. If you're more redistributive, you're sort of black-pilled on reshoring. That's where I'm at. But we've had disagreements about it, like the three of us.
I think you can at least do on some stuff, bringing jobs back. I think you can do that and also do some redistribution. I don't think that's necessarily impossible. In terms of like, at least in terms of like Trump stuff, there was some great trade stuff that he did where he brought some jobs back and did some good there. But in terms of redistribution, I think what really radicalized me was Michael Bloomberg's 2020 run, where he just like hopped in. He just like hopped in the Democratic primary just because he had a shit ton of money and like that was
I remember. Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if like somebody should really be allowed to do this, you know?
Oh my god, that was like a few months. That's another thing that just got lost in the deluge. It was a few months, and like all those graphs of how much money he was putting into the campaign was like
Unreal.
quadruple, 10 times what everybody else was combined. Like,
I think he might have. I would have to get the number, but it was hundreds of millions of dollars we spent too. Like,
I mean, it was like far and away more than any other candidate has ever spent.
Yeah, and just to be like, just to get on the stage. I mean, he didn't have any sort of base or backing at all.
Yep.
He was just a rich guy who was like, oh well, maybe I could be president.
Yep, and Chuck Todd's like, well, he's great. I mean, who's left of him on guns and all this stupid shit like AstroTurf shit.
And so in terms of that, I'm like, that kind of radicalized me on like some sort of wealth tax. Now I'd have to look at, there are various proposals for that. But in terms of like just billionaires alone, maybe there's, I've said this before, but I'd say Trump, if he still is one, he's the only good billionaire. I think most of them are weirdo people who have a lot of creepy stuff going on. They live like kings. And they all, even like the right loves to be like, oh, Elon Musk is so cool. And he's like so young and he loves memes and stuff. And it's like, this dude is in favor of putting chips in human brains.
Yeah, he is depraved.
Yeah, it's very weird. So I'm open to seeing like if there's a billionaire with a lot of good ideas and like is just not like a weirdo NPC person. Yeah, I don't know if it is possible, but that's what I'm saying. So in terms of that, I'm like, and being a Republican, I'm like, well, basically all of them give to Democratic causes. So why are we still protecting these people?
Right. Yeah, they all virtue signal left. What was it?
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon and Bezos were all signaling for BLM or whatever, which, is obviously completely just a funding source for the DNC.
Yeah. And Bezos is up there taking flights to space now. Isn't that cool?
Fuck no. Talking about he's taking 18-year-old teenage boys up to space. Bro, what the fuck are you talking about?
Wait, he didn't say that, did he?
Yeah, dude. He took a teen boy up to space with him. That's literally what the
way.
Yeah, some motherfucker.
It was some like 18-year-old like it was like the most like typical like privileged, like it just fit like
twink looking motherfucker, dude.
Think of like the most privileged like liberal like white college person you could think of, and that's what this kid looked like.
Oh my god! I brought a boy with me.
yeah, dude. Going to fucking outer space. Cool.
That one dude kind of pulled a nice little move though. He spent like 18 million on tickets, and then he was like, oh no, I have a previous engagement, so I won't be going to space with Jeff Bezos. Like, nice. he just ditched it at the last second.
Well, see, you were just mentioning this a little. Like, it's another thing that is good as far as like right leaning perspective that I like is like this whole like instead of fandom for these people being like, oh, they worship Moloch, like an affinity for Moloch, like that doesn't bode well with my Christian shit. Like, I mean, we have a different angle of getting to that, but I mean, it's the same thing.
So I'd say like the left. A lot of like what I see on the left, the argument is that like any billionaire, at least some of them, like a billionaire is a failed policy. Like any billionaire is a failed policy. And on the right, like the hatred you see for billionaires is like, these people are my enemies. They're doing everything that I am opposed to. So why am I still protecting them? It makes
They're
no sense.
controlling the policy. So how the fuck are you supposed to fix them with some policy, bro? Like what the fuck? That's the thing that these fucking libs don't understand, man. It's so frustrating.
Well, yeah, and it's like we have like these debates on the right that are all about, we just need like a limited small government. And it's like these people are just like, oh, we have this limited small government, but I'll fight for the rights of Jeff Bezos until I die, like who lives like a modern day king and is basically like, in essence, him and all these other people, they're basically like a fourth branch of government that run our shit from behind the scenes. So yeah, and that's maddening on the right sometimes. You see these like small C conservatives where they're like, oh well, we just need to return to a time when like the government wasn't this massive leviathan, and you're not going to see it anytime in our lifetime. So either use big government and try to get some good stuff done, or like get out of the game.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
So lateral disarmament or something. It's like if we can just give up all of our guns, then surely the other side will do the same thing. It's like we were talking about Trump earlier. It's like, say what you will about Trump after everything, but like he's a fucking tire iron to just beat them with.
Yeah.
I don't understand what, like, you know, what is the line? Like get the government small enough to be able to drown it in a small bathtub. Like
it's like good luck.
Yeah, well, it's like good luck, and also like I can't think of a worse time to do that. Anybody thinking that the concept of the state in the U.S. denotes the actual formal government is out of their fucking mind.
Oh yeah, it's all like, even like Trump as a person, he was great, but the problem was what hampered him through the entire thing was this massive bureaucracy, which was controlled by people who were not friendly to Trump. So it is like you're talking about the state. It's a lot more than just these branches. It's all these agencies. Mm-hmm. It's the entire. We live like literally like 0.2 miles away from the Pentagon. It's like all of this stuff. It's the people running that. It's all right next to the Pentagon. Across the street from our apartment is a giant Boeing building. Mm-hmm. And so it's all these people that have their interests that are running it too.
Yeah, this is what I've always found frustrating with the people like, oh, just small government. It's like, dude, in what world do you think the government has any power? Like, there is no public sector. Yeah. Like, the public sector is the private sector. They own them. They own them outright. We all know this. Like, the revolving door. These are platitudes. These are cliches. Like, everybody knows this already.
No, they have power, but they just choose to wield the power in that way. Like, it's created in that way to serve these interests specifically.
Well, they're bribed.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing is like, you know, when you talk about like practical solutions and everything, people can always disagree. But in my mind, one of the best bets that exists, insofar as there is any actual like viable solution, is using the formal state as a tool to try to dismantle this stuff in the first place. Yes. And so
you have to reorganize the state though, like in how it works.
Their incentives are to private, to the elite. You know, you need to reorient their incentives to us.
Yeah, and see, I don't know if I would agree. I would say CRK was right, but probably I would say it to a lesser extent. I would say that the government isn't necessarily controlled by these people, but they're in bed with them. So I think they do it. Not again. They're not. It's not like they're doing this begrudgingly. They're like, oh well, I'm trying, but I have this person controlling me. It's kind of like, oh well, you know, I want to do some good, but I also want to have a lot of money, and they're donating to me. So
these people's material interests are aligned. They're not just like being coerced into this. These people are acting in behalf of their material interests, which are the same as these other people, and that's why they're in the positions of powers that they are.
Oh man, it makes me sick.
Yeah. Well, these people are sick.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
But like, I'm wondering too. Like, so do you like what? So as far as like the right today, like in this post-Trump situation, like, do you feel like? Okay, so you say you're like right socially and more like nationalist economically or left economically.
Absolutely. Yeah, nationalist, but even if you say that, that's like left wing to some of Republicans. And
that's wild.
Yeah, I know.
That's so wild because if you say that on the left, you're a Nazi.
Yeah. So you say that on the right, you're like a communist. So
that's amazing. Yeah. That shit is. But where do you catch like more flack? Do you feel like as far as other people on the right disagreeing with you, do you feel like there's more of like a flack on the not being free market enough, or do you catch more flack as far as like not being right enough on social issues, or
definitely not being like, I have one of my best friends is more of one of those limited government conservatives, and we have arguments about this all the time, but I definitely would say that I get more flack for just being I'll change my views on certain things depending on, like I said, like depending on who I'm talking with I'm eager to find common ground. So if you say something like, child tax credits are good, they're a pretty good thing for families in this country. I've caught flack from the right for saying that. And then you get called like, oh, are you like a socialist? I'm like, no, I'm not. But I'm really not. But the same thing comes to healthcare. Like, I know that we talked about this a little, CRK, but like if I say to some friends on the right, like, there could be some form of nationalized healthcare in this country, they get freaked out. But the reason they get freaked out is because the people on the left say, like, abortion is healthcare, like that's reproductive healthcare, like trans surgeries are healthcare. Yes. So like, you're never going to get anybody on the right to buy into this if you're, and for good reason too. I mean, I agree with them. I don't want to get into some sort of healthcare agreement with the state if it covers like killing babies. I just do not agree with that at all. Yep. And that would be compromising my standards. So I agree with them there. Like, but that's where you have to kind of get, if you have a left wing a left wing party in this system that really wants universal health care, they're going to have to do some serious restructuring on their family policy. And that's just like, there's no really ifs, ands, or buts about it. So
what do you mean by that?
So in terms of like how they think about family issues. So if they say like, we want to be able to fund abortions through this national healthcare system. Like that's just not, you're never going to get any right to agree to that. And it's the same thing with, you'd have to also have some discussions on the right and on the left too, in terms of how you keep families intact, because there's no real structure to do that anymore. But that's the gist of it.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminded me of when I was like leftist, and like I would get into arguments with leftists and be like, yeah, man, like I'm for nationalized healthcare and all that, but like shoehorning in this, like, oh, we need to collectively cover the gender reassignment surgery or whatever. I'm like, I would just be like, dude, you're gonna kill us. Like, do you want this to happen or not? You're gonna kill us.
It's dead on arrival, and so
exactly, it's dead on arrival.
Dude, I'd be happy with just like universal healthcare for like life-saving or necessary.
Yeah, it's like life-saving medicines and stuff.
Basic shit.
But then they'll say like they need a trans.
Yeah. Then they can tie it into mental health.
They do sleight of hand. Yeah, with suicide statistics.
Yeah, but the thing is that's not even sturdy ground for them, because like most people's, like if you look at like people's suicide rates, it's higher usually after they transition.
Yeah, I actually did not know that. I did not fucking know that. This all reminds me though.
A million times.
You're talking about like family and how that kind of. I was about to say intersects with this stuff, but oh boy, it's the cursed word. Like, did you guys see that fucking post recently? That was this guy running, I think, for some position in like Colorado or something. And he said something about like, I mean, he's running on the platform of just making it so that like a household can afford to just have one person work, one person stay home and take care of the kids. And it was like that state's Democratic Party like retweeted it and was like, "This is coded language for women don't belong in the workplace." Which if he had said that, I would have been even happier. Yeah, but like it's just fucking insanity, dude. It's fucking insanity. And when they, to be fair, that might be like a little hyperbolic, because like that post got ratioed into fucking oblivion.
It got destroyed.
But like if that is where they're starting at, then it shouldn't be that hard to just pick these people fucking apart, dude.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a very simple economic message, and it's a very good one too. It's a winning strategy. It's that you should be able to raise an average family of 4 on one income in this country, no matter the job, which is a very winning policy, and it certainly get a majority of people that would agree with that. And also to pretend that women don't want to be able to stay home and raise their kids, at least when they're very young, is a myth. There are now. This is another thing I support that I can get some flack from the right for. but the number of women who want to be able to stay home and raise their children but can't due to economic constraints, that is an actual policy failure. And kids need their moms. They need to be able to be raised by their moms and not the state, and not some like private daycare center. But yeah, you saw even like that thinking on the left. You saw that tweet did get absolutely obliterated. But if that's like, even that's a response from some state Democratic or city Democratic Party, that they're like, oh, well, they want to keep women out of the workforce. This is sexist. Like, come on, man, give me a break.
Yeah, it means SLAV
like you just hit the. Well, I was just gonna say you hit the fucking nail on the head too, which is like mothers belong with their fucking kids. It like you don't want to just outsource that role to the state. Like any fucking like free market conservative that is talking about, oh, this is some level of market intervention that we can't tolerate, is tacitly fucking endorsing
bigger government.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not fucking, and I'm sorry, but like having a little bit more of a tighter grip on the government on the economy is far more preferable to me than having a tighter grip on the minds of the fucking children.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, come on, this shouldn't even be fucking complicated.
Yeah, it's not hard, but you do see like those sort of on the left. It's like okay, well, we have if you want to do that, then you want to get women out of the workforce, and that's sexist because we need equality, la-di-da. And then on the right, you have like, oh well, the government can't interfere in these policies. Just let the economy eventually figure it out, and we want. There was actually a tweet from the GOP or the RNC a couple months back where they're like, and I'm a Republican, so I'm not trying to crap on the GOP or the RNC too much, but they're like, oh well, Biden's economy has destroyed women, and women haven't been able to go back to work because of Biden's economy. They've been busy at home with their children. Like, are you joking me? Oh man, it's depressing. But you see those reactions on both sides, and it's a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that me and SLAV had disagreed with briefly about. It was like, see, this is the thing. This is the way I think of it. It's like, I don't want to ban anybody from anything. I don't want women to work. See, this is where everything gets all like muddled and confused and all that.
Because everyone thinks in these just completely extreme fucking binaries. It's absurd.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't want women to have to work. That's the thing. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to ban women from working, and I don't want them to have to work. So it's like, it's like what you said. There should be. This is not new. This is not unprecedented. This is how it was in the past. It was like you only need one person, like a decent amount of income. Like you don't need a lot to
that's how it used to be.
That's how it used to fucking be before all the rising cost of living and all this bullshit. Yeah. And people misattributed to a bunch of different shit. But like that's really what it was. I mean, it's measurable. It's tangible.
And you saw. I don't know if you guys saw this, but the other day, this past week, the Senate was like debating or voting on making women register for the draft. And you saw a lot of from the feminists. You saw a lot of performative outrage about that they're like, okay, well, that's enough equality for now. It's like, all right, well, maybe you could see it a little bit more past this issue too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, and I feel similarly with sex work in general. It's like, I don't want people to have to do it. You know what I mean? Does that mean I want to ban it? No, I don't want to ban it. I don't want to ban women from working in an office. Like if you need to like get economic freedom and you're a woman.
CRK just said sex work is real work.
I didn't know.
I want to ban sex work. I don't know if I agree with you on that one, CRK, but
this is like banning it, outright banning it. No, I don't believe in that. That's me. I might be alone on that. I don't believe in banning it. Yeah. But this is the thing. We should not be in a situation where people have to do it. And the left, what they'll do is they'll say it's empowerment. It's empowerment that you're a wage cuck. No, it's not.
Well, it's not. You see it on the right too. There was a big debate over. There was a porn star that showed up to a Turning Point USA conference, and it was like there were these people on the right. They're like, oh, like porn stars are just like super conservative. Like they're generally just like they love America and la-di-da.
One shouted out Ben Shapiro, right? Shout out Ben.
I don't know. I don't know if he did, but I saw some people on the right. And when you're talking about like if it's a conservative movement, I don't really know what you're conserving with, like defending that type of stuff. And also, like,
bukkake is a sacred American tradition.
Return to bukkake.
but see, like, that's different too, because like sex work as real work has been kind of co-opted. I mean, there have been prostitutes around since the dawn of time. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about like digital prostitution, which is like, we have like the technology that we have readily available in this country. It leads to the average age that a young male views porn, hardcore pornography, is like 13 in this country. That is a serious problem, a very serious problem. And so I'm for limiting that or banning that as much as possible, at least until some certain age group. I mean, I'm an idealist, so I'd like to see it banned outright, but I know that might not happen. But if it doesn't, then you need to have some sort of limits on technology or limits on that type of work or outlet that people get paid through, because it's really a screwed up thing. So I'm not necessarily talking about like a street hooker. I'm more talking about like these digital hookers.
Of course. Yeah. Like, there's a clear financial incentive for this like rhetoric of, oh, well, sex work is real work, and like trying to like bring it into the scope of normality, because then it allows it to be more commodified by these big corporations and stuff, and make them into these markets and new ways to capture money and capital that weren't there previously.
It's like the OnlyFans trend. It's like, like my girlfriend has an OnlyFans. Congrats, man. Like, she's selling other guys' nudes online for like a bunch of money.
Dude, shout out iDubbbz, am I right? It's like we're not, well, and the thing is like it's like the language always gets muddled. Like, I'm not talking about like these broads on OnlyFans a lot of the time are like fucking college educated little fucking weirdos. I'm not talking about like going down to Casino Road and throwing lump and prole in the paddy wagon. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking just for like more like state brutality towards just like towards just like wretched souls just
the most
wandering the
downtrodden.
Street. Like to what end? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's an important distinction too. So
yes, for sure. Because it's all been flattened. Because sex work it's a flattened term now. Because
it's not just like back in the day, prostitutes were very looked down upon. I mean, it wasn't like a job that was like this glorified thing that it's supposed to be nowadays, where it's like, oh yes, like a win for feminism that like these people are able to sell their bodies on the streets and online.
Yeah, and I mean, like this is why I prioritize economic things. Like the same thing with the left of like with racism or whatever. I'm like, if you have if you have a better functioning economy, you will see less racism. Like racism is a product of that. So like, and it's the same thing with this, with a lot of the right wing social concerns, like sex work or whatever. Like, if you have a functioning economy, you're going to see less sex work. That's really what I believe. Like, I mean, I don't think it just comes out of nowhere. Like, you're going to see less of it, and you're going to see more women that choose to like work at home and be with their family because they have the option to. So like, it's going to happen organically. So I don't believe in just being like, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be like, oh, let's just shut down like all this stuff. But whatever. But I mean, that's sort of how.
No, you're right.
Need comprehensive strategies.
Yeah, you're right, CRK. And I think, part of my issue on the right with this is like people like with the porn debate, the right's like, oh no, we want to be a big tent party and like all about inclusion and everything else. And then the race stuff, they respond like when they get called racist, they're like, oh no, Democrats are the real racists. It's like we are everything, every position we operate. And I know you guys have heard, everybody's heard that line, but and that's why it's such a tired talking point. But
no, now it's going to what is it? Democrats are the real sex worker, exclusionary, radical feminists,
the real smurfs, the real turfs.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem is we get into this. We always start from this position where we're reacting to the things that the left does instead of like doing our own thing or having our own like original ideas. We're purely an oppositional party, which is such a problem. But that's why a lot of these problems have been allowed to persist. on the right as well. So
that's a good point.
So
that's
yeah,
a good point.
But yeah, hey boys, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, man. Yo, appreciate you coming on last second. We usually give more warning, but you're like our biggest guest, I think, by the numbers. Like, yeah, you came on like very last minute, so much appreciated. We really
I'm honored. And if you guys if you ever want to have me back on, just let me know. And then also, like I told you, I can help you try to get connected with some of the more base people on the right too. So
that'd be great, man.
Yeah, that'd be outstanding. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, thank you guys a lot. I'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Sure,
Sounds
man.
good, man.
All right.